There we go. Everyone joining us. Okay, there you go. They're trickling in. I always get really excited at the start, and I'm like, I want to talk right away, but I just need to calm down. For everyone joining us, welcome. There's a fun little question that should be on your screen on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being I think vibes are metrics, and 5 being I dream of dashboards. How data-driven do you feel your team is? And if you're dropping your answer in the chat, just remember to click the down arrow so that it's set to everyone, so that everyone can see your answer. There we go. People are replying. I think I'm going to say 3 to 4. Ooh, a lot of 3s. Oh, we got our first one. I haven't seen a 5 yet.
I saw a 1000.
Yeah, I saw 1000. 2, but dream of changing that. Love that. Ooh, some 4s. 3, but sometimes I think I'm a 4. Don't forget, if you're dropping into the chat, there's like a little down arrow that says everyone versus hosts and panelists. If you'd like everyone to see your answer and you'd like to make some friends, make sure you drop that down to everyone.
Oh, there's a 5.
Hell yeah. Oh, I can't wait. 3, but sometimes, yeah. Perfect. Okay. Eric, you can talk to me anytime. Don't forget, if you're dropping it in here, there's a little down arrow caret that says everyone or hosts and panelists. Click everyone so you can talk to all of us. Okay, cool.
I love Tony's comment about executives don't know what they want. We'll hit a little bit on that.
Oof. Maybe I think we're going to get to that today. Oh, this is such a good question. I'm telling you, I think I could stay on this screen for like 8 hours a day just to get people's data. 5, but I feed our execs metrics and data. Heck yeah. Me for leadership 1. Wait, that was really good. That's how I feel. 4, but I also think vibes. Yep.
Yep.
Yep. Ken and I just said that at the beginning too. Oh, this is going to be so fun already. Okay. For everyone joining us, I know I said, I mean, I could truly stay on this screen forever, and those coming in later, I'm sad we'll not be able to see this, but here we are. We're all here. Let's talk about it. So this is HR Therapy, my monthly virtual event, and we're talking about data today, and I just can't wait for this because I am a nerd for data, and you're about to learn so much in this event. Quickly, what are we doing here? What is happening? Who am I? You'll get to all that in a second. But today you're going to meet me and Ken, if you haven't already. We're going to do a segment called Dear Hib and Friends, which is loosely inspired by Dear Anne that I used to read growing up. It's like an advice column. So we're going to take some advice-like questions, and we're going to give you our expert opinions. And then we'll do live Q&A. So if you have questions at any point during this, you can actually drop them in the Q&A button in Zoom, and we'll make sure we get them answered at the end. And then we'll wrap with a what's next. So that's the agenda. And before we go any further, I have to tell you all this is being recorded. Don't worry, none of your personal information or anything you say in the chat is being recorded. The chat can be distracting. You can make a best friend or you can be annoyed by it. So choose your own adventure. You can stay in the chat and talk to everyone, or you should minimize it if you do not want distractions and you only want to focus on me and Ken. And the last 20 minutes, we'll take live Q&A, so please get those questions in and we'll try to address them. You can also upvote them. So if you see an incredibly spicy question and you demand it be answered, you can upvote it to make it happen. Okay, now who are we? What are we doing here? Ken, you get to go first because you're my guest. Ken, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hey, everybody. I'm Ken Matas. I'm the director of market insights at HiBob. So I'm an organizational psychologist by training. So I've studied everything from racial and ethnic harassment and discrimination in the armed forces for the government to remote and flexible work for nonprofit think tanks and the news media to deep for-profit work in engagement and employee experience to working now at HiBob, where I help us tie all that information together into meaningful thought leadership and product development ideas that make a better HCM for all of you.
This is my second time sharing a stage with Ken, and every time I'm on the stage with him, I just am obsessed with all the work that you've done and how your brain works. So when you agreed to do this with me, I was like, yes, now I can ask all the things I've always wanted to ask because you just have like such a wealth of like understanding around data, the experiences people are having at work, and that can, I think, can be a huge unlock for HR. So before I rant anymore or passionately fangirl about you, let me introduce myself. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Hiba Yusuf. I'm the Chief People Officer at Workweek, which is a creator-led media company. I also happen to be one of our creators. I created a brand with my company called I Hate It Here, and I write a weekly newsletter that goes out 3 times a week. I have this virtual event series, a podcast by the same name, and also a live event series coming to Chicago in October. So if you're interested, I'll share more information at the end. When I am not CPOing and creating content, you can find me reading. I just I read. I love book recommendations. If you all want to give them to me, please do. I will not be in San Diego next week, unfortunately, but I hear the SHRM conference has a very interesting lineup for another day. In the chat, someone just said that, so I had to answer. Okay, now let's get into it. What are we doing here? Dear Headband Ken, my advice column dreams come true. First question to start us off. In a sea of metrics, how do you actually determine what data points are worth collecting for HR?
So I think this is like the question that everybody ultimately has because technology has made it possible to collect so much information that now it's just like I have piles of things. What do I actually want to spend my time on? What I want to use? Like I really think of this question as asking both what's informative and what's actually worth the time to invest. And so, if you plot me in front of an HR leader and said, make this make sense for me, I think my first thing would be to like just clear this table, like wash it all away, stop looking at all the stuff in front of you, and actually move from the metrics to the business questions. And so like make it concrete. If I had a product leader who's saying to me, I can't make my deadlines, like, great, let's explore that. Why can't you make your deadlines? Is this a person problem or is it a problem in your specs? I can't solve the latter, and maybe I can do something for the former. They're telling me, oh, I can't meet my deadlines because I'm short staffed. Great. Short staffed can mean you don't have the right number of people. It can mean you don't have people getting hired fast enough, or it can mean they're leaving too fast. So right there, I've got some data to answer a really specific question, which I can then go back and say, okay, I looked at your hiring data. We're getting people in as quickly as it seems reasonable, but your turnover is kind of through the roof. So let's explore that. And that really makes your data purpose focused, rather than just like, I have a giant dashboard of things that I maintain all the time. If I'm, oh, so go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I was just saying I love that.
I was gonna say, then I can go to, am I answering this question all the time? Because when I think of metrics, I'm not thinking really about data. I'm thinking about what am I reporting to leadership over and over again? And if they're not interested in it, if it's not answering multiple questions or recurring decisions, it really shouldn't be a metric. I should just give them a timeline of, if you want that info, I'll have it for you in a week. If you want something constant, it needs to be something that you find important and that helps you make a decision.
Yeah. I was talking about this last night. So I did an event about AI last night, and one of the biggest things we talked about was like you leverage AI if you don't know what problems you're trying to solve. And as you were talking, I was also thinking about that because I was like, how often do we encounter problems in HR? Like what you said, turnover, or we're not hiring this role fast enough. And I think if you think about your problem points, like right now, what are your 3 problem points in your org? Start there before you run off and go, I'm just going to collect engagement data. Because I'm like, what are you doing with that data? Why do you need that data? Pulsing your employees also tires them. Like, is that really the data you should be focused on? So I love that you brought up that you like find the problems or the things that you were hearing over and over again and prioritize those metrics versus the ones that I don't think anyone's asking you about. But it's interesting, like we want to hire quickly, but not a single person has ever asked me our time to hire for any roles.
Exactly. And
I'm
so
like,
like,
"Hmm."
why calculate it? It's not a number anyone cares about.
No, not a single time. They're like, not a single person has said, can you hire this person in 4 to 6 weeks? I'm like, I could literally tell you our time to hire for every single role. Like it automatically collects it for me, but at the same time, like no one's asking about it. So it's clearly not a problem that's actually holding us back. So I do love that direction here. Like there's so much we can collect and transact on any day. What is your organization actually struggling with?
And Okay, do you have a definition of good? So like I love that you brought up the AI piece because so many CEOs are coming out and saying, okay, it's now gonna be in your performance review that you're using AI. I'm like, okay, what does using AI mean? Just that they like type something in? Does it have to affect a speed metric? Like, what is your definition of success? Or do I just need to like do 5 ChatGPT prompts a month and I've satisfied it? And if you can't answer that question, then maybe this isn't even a thing we care about.
In performance reviews is wild to me. I'm sorry. I was just sitting with that for a second. We're gonna come back to that. Like we should move on. I have 5 more questions, but like that is wild to me. I'm like, why would you want to do that? It's changing so much. Anyways, okay. Um, I think this is a really interesting question. Like you've seen a lot of data. You see these insights. What's one people metric that you think HR leaders are maybe sleeping on, and why does it matter more than they may realize?
So I think the place where everybody should be really focusing right now is on manager effectiveness. Um, I- and there's like a bunch of different pieces that you can look on to explore that, but the current moment is so dynamic. And what generally happens is executives will have a big strategic idea, like use AI. And then they'll throw it at a manager and say, make this real somehow. I'm going to go do something else. And the managers just, okay, some of them will figure it out, some of them won't. And knowing who's able to work with that is going to be helping the business identify um, its real power players and opportunities. And so thinking about things like, can you show performance ratings or product outcomes by team and identify who's hitting their marks? Can you check their engagement and any manager effectiveness survey results to see if employees are having a good experience while hitting those marks? Can you then look at retention and say, all right, people who are hitting their marks and having a good experience, hold on to their people, or are they still walking out the door? And then are they growing those people? Like, does the person who works for this really good manager actually get to grow in the organization and start delivering value in more places? Or are they just attachments to this one person creating a single point of failure? And so I think there's a lot of opportunity in that space.
Manager effectiveness, like we do 2 pulse surveys a month, like every 2 weeks, kind of. Sometimes we push it to like every 3 to 4 weeks because we don't want to annoy the employees too much. But one of them is always about the company. The second one is always about their manager. And I've been like really trying to play with the data to like see like where are there gaps? Where do people feel more strongly about the company than they do about their manager? And manager effectiveness, I think, could unlock so many people. I also told this story last night where I met with a CEO who was like, wouldn't it be interesting if like AI was your manager? And I was like, no, it would not be interesting for me if that was I no, I don't want that. But I was thinking about that because they were like, well, it's such a manager effectiveness is like such a problem. And I was like, then we solve that problem. We don't try to put a robot in charge of people. It doesn't work that way. And so I think like more and more people are really looking to like, how do I make these managers effective, especially when I think about AI in general, like augmenting part of manager roles to like help them do the more human piece that they often don't get time to do because they're doing so much of like tactical admin kind of work. So I love manager effectiveness because I think that one is a differentiator at any organization. Like your manager impacts so much of your life. If you have a bad one, it could potentially turn you off a company and you could lose top talent.
Yeah. Oh, they just make bad decisions. And so you can have really good people doing really good work, and it's all worthless because it was the wrong decision to begin with. And I think a lot of people miss that detail as well.
Oh my God. We could talk about manager effectiveness for okay. I have to talk about this because we did say vibes, and sometimes I do love the vibes. How do you approach collecting data that's qualitative and quantitative, especially when I feel like most execs do tend to prioritize hard numbers? Although we heard in the chat earlier, some people do rely on leadership vibes. What's like the perfect balance? I always struggle with this because I observe and hear so much from employees, but I don't want to quickly jump and say, I think they're disengaged, right?
Well, I think the issue with leaders is that it's a bit of an oversimplification to say that they love hard numbers. I think deep down, leaders like to be right. And so thinking about it from that perspective
Yeah.
means that you're going to use stories and you're going to use numbers based on what's going to actually help them be right, if not in the moment, in their next decision. And so
Mm.
I really like to approach it with a sort of cyclical approach of qualitative to quantitative back to qualitative. So like you need to ask people some personal questions, and by personal I just mean like human questions to understand what's happening, to even have a theory that drives you to what numbers to collect. So like say, as I said, your product team isn't making their deadlines. So you need some quantitative data to understand like what does it mean to not make their deadlines? What are they missing it by? Like
Mhm.
if they're then you go talk to them and say, all right, what is the problem? You can get lots of data, but a lot of the lived experience isn't captured in numbers unless you ask really detailed surveys, and then that's just a waste of time. Once you've gotten the story, you can then go back and say, all right, now let me do a very pointed survey or a very pointed exploration of the data to see if that story is repeating itself over and over again. Uh, that's when you can go to leadership and say, I can describe a really clear scenario that's interfering with your success. It is happening all over the place. I can now also tell you how much money that might cost you because I can see how common it is. Let me go. If you will now throw some money towards solving this, I can now go do the thing. And again, do the conversation, do the numbers, tell you a good story. I think what ends up happening if you focus too much on quant is you just end up blasting them with numbers.
Yeah.
And then they wander off and say, well, I heard so and so say. And if you're too much in stories, well, how is that happening to everybody? So you kind of got to trap them with both and then say, like, but if you listen to me, you will be right. That's what gets them involved.
I love that positioning too. Like you're really stroking their egos. Like you're really like, yeah, don't you want to be right about this? But I also think a lot of times the qualitative for me helps really tell the story of like what's happening at the organization. And then I come in with like, yeah, so and so might be feeling this way, or like here's an observation they had. And then also like, well, let's look at what the data says.
Yeah.
And I kind of try to pair them always together too, where it's like part of my storytelling approach is like there is a time and place for qualitative. I just don't, you can't over index on either because you're going to lose somebody in it all.
Yeah. Qual is what is happening, quant is how common it is. And from that, you can decide, do we need to do anything about it? Do I just talk to that one person? Or is this a systemic problem that's now an HR policy? I think a lot of times we react to one story, create a policy, and everyone else is like, why is this the rule? That only affected Bob.
Yeah. Oh, poor annoying Bob. That's so true. We're so like policy light because my CEO hates that. Like we have policies, we only really build them to like match for everybody. We don't ever build them for just like one use case because he like genuinely hates that. He's like, what's the point of writing a policy for one person? Like we have to write it for everyone. So like I got lucky in that sense, but I do think like I've worked other places where they really want to like prioritize like one data point that hits an experience that's like so small in the organization, like a cross section of the organization that you're like, this is not that big of a deal and we don't need to be doing this. So I also think when you're like collecting this data, looking at like who it impacts across the org too is another thing you have to layer in as you're considering like, what do I even do with this? How do I
Yeah,
talk to my executives about this? Like if it's impacting one person, is it worth bringing it up to your executives? Is that something you could solve without even needing to bring it up to the executives?
exactly.
I'm always about that. Okay. My next question. What kind of data presentations make execs lean in versus tune out?
So I think you really want to start with like the problem that they want to solve and then show how people stuff helps them solve it. I think I in a lot of the HR conversations I'm in, people start with things like turnover is a problem. We need to fix turnover, or engagement is a problem. We need to fix engagement.
Yeah.
And like not really. Like those are means, they're not ends. There might be ends for us,
Yeah.
but for that executive, they're just tools to achieve something else. And
Mhm.
so you need to start your story with the something else and then work your way back. So like for example, I worked with a veterinary organization during COVID, and they had a huge amount of low engagement amongst their vets. And you could go in and talk to them about like, oh, the vets are unhappy and they might turn over. What was so much more effective was to walk in and say, hey, this is a manifestation of this business moment of a spike in everybody getting puppies. And so now we have this sudden rush of demand. Are you going to deal with that demand by hiring more doctors? Or are you going to deal with it by providing supports to keep the numbers static because we think that this demand thing is going to end once COVID goes away and people stop buying puppies every 5 seconds? That makes it a problem that they care about that ties back to your problem. And so the more you can weave mutual interests together and position HR as the lever for a business issue, the more they pay attention to what you're talking about because it's now something that they understand.
Yeah. Did you get a puppy during COVID? Was my one main question, but then I have other real follow up too.
We got a puppy right before COVID.
Okay. Okay.
He should be in here right now, but he would be barking. So
That example is just so perfect. So I was thinking about that as you were talking about the vets and the puppies during COVID. I was actually thinking about like HR during COVID, where like people started reporting that HR has one of the like highest burnouts of any industry. And I was like, yeah, navigating a global pandemic somehow became our job responsibility when like we had never had that as a responsibility to begin with, and everyone pivoted and went remote, and suddenly we were in charge of all of that, which like I do think like solidified HR's place in every single room for the future. But I also thought like that was like such a analogy to me where you're talking about the puppies and the vets, and I was like HR, and someone
yeah,
said with therapists too, like it's been really interesting watching that, because I'm sure if I went to my CEO and I was like, I'm burnt out, and that he wouldn't like lean into that story. I think if I went to him and I was like, hey, like I'm navigating all these different changes, and now with the introduction of AI, and now with this other thing, and our hiring, like it's really starting to stress the system, meaning like I might need some support. And so I do think when you frame it that way, like really explaining to them the what's in it for me too, because like obviously my CEO wants a highly engaged CPO. He doesn't want me to be tired and burnt out. So when you approach it from like the what's in it for me, that marketing thing, the WIFM, I always mix that up. When you tell the story that way, though, I do think like this might be like a hot take, but I think a lot of execs are egotistical and they like want to feel like, again, they're right and they're solving the big problems. So when you go to them and really pitch it to them as like, how are they going to benefit from this? I almost think the buy-in is so much easier.
yeah. I had a funny moment. It's stuck with me my entire life since grad school. That was more years ago than I want to count. Um, but I was in a car with a bunch of MBA students, the only HR intern in this program that I was in. And they were all exchanging what schools they went to, and I'm an MBA, I'm an MBA, I'm an MBA. I'm like, oh, I'm an organizational psychologist. And they were like, oh my God, we all want to talk to you because we know what people should do. You know how to get them to do it.
Ooh.
And I was like, that has ever since been the thing that I anchor on of like, you come up with your business strategy, but no one's going to follow you because they don't understand it. They don't tie to it. You haven't considered their needs. Whatever human thing is in the way, let me get that human thing out of the way of your success. And
Yeah.
that has always served me well.
I love that. I feel like we're teaching a class right now on influencing too, because like data can be leveraged to like really influence and get your agenda to like get its buy-in. But it all comes back to that, who is that person across the table from you, and how do you convince them that like the thing you're trying to solve is also going to make them so much more successful.
Yeah.
I like,
And I'm here to support you, not you here to support me.
mhm. But I hate that sometimes.
Yeah.
Moving on. Okay, so you look at all this data, you talk to clients, you're looking at the market. What do you look for when you're analyzing quarterly HR trends? Like, what's the moment when you really say, like, this isn't just like noise anymore?
Yeah. So there's a couple different ways to go about that. So one is changes in the qualitative information.
Okay.
So what is happening in tandem with the numbers? So for a long time, I did a lot of work with engagement surveys, and I would constantly review the questions on how fair was your salary, and
Mm.
there was always a repeating theme Didn't matter the company, but if somebody wasn't happy, they said the words, "I'm not paid enough to put up with X." And so I was like, great. Your money, your salary problem is actually an everything else problem.
Mm.
You don't need more money. They're just angry about the other thing. Just fix the other thing. Um, there came a point after COVID when cost of living started going up that the
Yeah.
qualitative information changed from "I'm not paid enough to put up with" to "I'm not paid enough to pay for." And I was like, ooh, the spike in this number is not a problem in culture. It is a problem in salary. And so now the conversation we need to have is, are we actually paying people enough? We may just need to pay them more. And so that was a complete flip based on how people were categorizing the same answer in the number. And it's one of the ways in which qualitative and quantitative really play together to help you
Yeah.
interpret data better.
Dang, there is so much cool data. I feel like quarterly is wild because things feel like it's the wild, wild west right now and they're changing all the time. So I do think when you pair it together, it just makes it that much more powerful because there are times where I'm like, oh, this is just noise, it'll pass. And I've
Yeah.
like just used my judgment a lot of the times where I'm like, I'm just gonna let this go. It's gonna pass. We're gonna get through this season and we'll be fine. But there are times where you have to stop and say, okay, now I'm hearing it and I'm seeing it. And I think I use the analogy all the time about HR's work is like often felt before it's like truly seen. And when I think about data as like a lot of people are experiencing it and it might not even show up in the data for like a long time, but that doesn't mean you can ignore it. It's like you have to be constantly evaluating the two. I love that. Was there anything surprising when you were analyzing like trends recently that came to mind where you were like, oh, that's never come up before?
Well, I mean, one place that's been really interesting has been looking at job frequencies. So, looking at how many job ads are in and how that's waxed and waned over time.
Yeah.
And there's some really nice data provided by Indeed that shows a really clear collapse of the job market at COVID, but no change at the time that AI came onto the market. And so when executives and others have been like, is AI causing this job loss scenario? I'm like, no, because I can like show you in a really clear picture. This over here is the what it looks like when an event collapses your trend line.
Mhm.
There's no collapse over here where AI came into the market. So I think this might not be as big as everyone's saying it is. And I've gotten some really gung ho AI is going to change the world people to stop and go like, oh, okay, maybe I need to think about this differently. And I think that's another thing that you want to look at when you want to say, is this noise or not? Is
Yeah.
it look at your trends and do you see what you would expect to happen if this thing was real? Um, as well as like compare it with other things. So like, okay, jobs are disappearing, but if I look at the software development against manufacturing, I see
Mhm.
almost the same dynamic, just at different levels. And so I was like, this is a market dynamic, very obviously, because two fundamentally different groups have almost the same shaped curve, just one is higher than the other.
Yeah. Ken, first of all, Ken, you're getting a bunch of love in the chat. But second of all, do you all see why I love talking to Ken? Every time I talk to you, I learn something new. And I like feel like I have a good grasp of data, but then you teach me something, and I'm like, holy shit, I never thought about it like that before. So I'm going to because you're right. Everybody's like, AI is gonna, we're gonna get rid of all these jobs. This and this is gonna happen. And I personally like, we don't have a crystal ball. And if I knew the future, like, do you think I would be in HR? I'd be doing other things, by the way, like if I knew what the future is gonna be, right? And so all of these CEOs that are like 20 to 30%, like I do feel like they're trying to be transparent and saying like this thing could change how we do work, but I honestly think the outcome is like more people are scared and actually don't have a clear understanding of what's actually happening. And you're
100%.
telling us about the data, like that's not actually happening.
Yeah. And I feel sorry for this is where I feel sorry for executive leaders because they're often caught in this weird spot of they need to keep saying something, but they also need to know what's actually happening and make decisions in the background. And I feel like with a lot of these, like, I'm going to do this layoff. I have to do this layoff. I need to make us still look strong so that employees don't flee, customers don't flee. And so I have to like do this weird double talk thing of like, yeah, those jobs are going to go away. You should start looking, but the company's still strong. And I really feel for them in those moments.
Yeah, it's always so uncomfortable when you have to. Somebody asked me yesterday, like, how do you balance the line between being transparent, like the memo from Amazon CEO to saying, like, we don't know what's going to happen with AI? Like, how do you balance that? And I'm like, for me, I've always defaulted to like a bit of transparency, probably radical transparency, where I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen. I am taking it day by day with all of you, and we are going to figure it out together. And the second I know something, you will be the first people to know. And also, I'm not going to scare you all with random data points that Amazon CEO collected. I want to talk about what's actually happening in the reality of our company and our organization in this moment. So I think like the first of all, every talk with you is always so wild. Somebody asked in the chat though, if you have any books, like as a data newbie, courses, books, or resources you'd recommend.
So I really like the book is sitting on my shelf right now.
Go get it.
Let me go grab that book.
They also want to know, Ken, if you have a book. Like
I've contributed to a couple of books. They're usually more focused pieces.
this is the Ken fan chat now and forevermore.
So I really enjoy The Tyranny of Metrics.
Ooh, okay.
So I think one of the things that we really want to do is approach things with a purpose. When I think of, I did some research with burnout, and the thing that really struck me in that space was it's not having a lot of work that creates burnout. It's doing a lot of work that you feel doesn't amount to anything. And I think a lot of metric scenarios are like, I spin out number, I spin out number, I spin out number. Does anybody care? Does this matter? It's a lot of work and it doesn't do anything or drive anything. And so I think looking at content that forces you to question, is that data actually useful? Is it controlling me or am I using it? Sort of breaks you out of that mindset of being a sort of servant of the computer.
Yeah.
And I think that anything that drives that thought process is what's going to get you a better take. I'm also doing a webinar series. We're working on the deadline dates now that focuses all about taking analytics from how to ask a good question, how to collect your data, how to analyze it, how to storytell, and then how to embed that in your decision-making process. So keep an eye out on the HiBob
Oh boy.
webinar series. We should be getting that hopefully sometime later this year.
Anything you're on, I'm watching. Okay, two more questions, and we'll go to live questions. If you have other questions for Ken, drop them in the Q&A. I promise we will get to them. What, here we go. I think we've touched on this lately, but maybe we have more. What's one common mistake HR makes when presenting metrics to leadership, and how would you fix it? I feel like we've touched on this, but
Well, the thing I see a lot of people do is to give away their power in the first 5 seconds, where they're like, I'm here to present numbers to you, and you are going to make meaning of them, and you are going to make a decision off of them. And this is a conversation I have with my team all the time where it's like, great, we went out, we pulled together all this data. Why? What does it mean? What are we tying this to? You need to have an opinion when you go into this meeting. And if you don't, it means you didn't do enough discovery with our stakeholder. It means you didn't actually think about what you put together. You just executed. And, for a team of like 4, we don't have the luxury of just executing. We need to keep their attention focused on value or we're going to drown in random stuff. And so I think the first and most important thing is you're not presenting numbers to them so that they can do something. You're presenting numbers to them because you have done something and found an answer or a really clear point in a direction. And at the end of the day, they might make the decision because they have 10 other pieces of information that collectively go in a different direction. But like, walk in with a vision of what it is you're saying, why you're saying it, and what they should do about it. A lot of the rest of it then just becomes basic, good presentation skills. Have a narrative, have good visualizations. Don't present more than you need.
I love that. I was just thinking, like, when you're like, don't give away your power, I'm like, I used to do that a lot. Like, I'd walk in and be like, our attrition is at this amount, and our retention for this one team is this. And I would just let them come to the conclusion instead of getting them to where I needed to get them. So I love that reminder because I do feel like data can be such a powerful unlock for HR teams. Somebody asked an interesting question in the chat about it's great advice, but what if you don't agree with the message?
I think that's a really important place to know why you don't agree with the message and whether or not this is an ethical disagreement
Yeah.
or, it just doesn't match your gut. So sometimes it's like, my gut says this. Okay, your gut is saying that for some other reason. Can you get data pulled into the equation? So I definitely had fit scenarios where I've been like, these numbers, this can't be right. Gone back, there was actually an error in the data somewhere. I was like, good thing I trusted my gut and went back and checked it. And so I think you need to pull that apart from places where you're saying, this pushes towards a strategy I don't agree with. So I'd had to counsel customers on the question of like, do you have a burn and churn employment model or do you have a long-term retention employment model? And be like, you need to pick because they are fundamentally different strategies. You're going to invest in different ways. There's ways to make both of them positive, but if you kind of walk the middle messily, you're making everybody miserable. And now I feel like I'm treating employees really badly. And so I think you need to pull those two types of scenarios apart.
Yeah. I also think of when you were giving that example, I think of all the people who do return to work mandates and then say it's because productivity will be higher in the office. I think of like that type of messaging where I'm like, you could never catch me being like, we're all going back to the office because the data shows that you'll be more productive. I'm like, no, the data actually shows the other. You're more at home. But okay, one more question, then we're getting a bunch in the Q&A, so we'll have to get to this. Okay, last question, and then we'll get to Q&A. So get your Q&A in there and be voting which ones you want us to answer. Is there a metric you think HR needs to retire? Something that no longer tells us what we think it does.
So I think data should always be acquired. So like you might not use it at this moment, but it might answer a question that's important sometime later. So I think it's important to separate metrics from data. The metric that I'm kind of bearish on right now is engagement, and intent to stay. Not because I don't think it's important, but I think it's not going to serve your purposes as a metric. If organizations are thinking about reducing size, a metric that is keyed so tightly to retention is not going to motivate behavior. And that's really what you want to do. And so what you need to do is look for places where you can say, if you really want to care about employee engagement, you need to show that the engagement is driving something in this moment. We are keeping them, but it's causing us a bigger problem. So presenteeism data, I was just looking at something, and there was a study that says showing up to work disengaged is 10 times more costly than just not showing up at all. Because people tend to work for 3 months at 75% capacity instead of taking 3 or 4 days off in a year. And so that then says, like, this is why it hurts you, even in this moment. So where is the line that we want to draw? I may not win the argument, but maybe I can push you a little further towards the right place. There's some studies that responding to, can you repeat that? There's some studies that looked at people showing up to work and people being absent from work, and they calculated the cost of absenteeism versus presenteeism, assuming that people, worked at partial capacity. Their data says about 57 days out of the year. And so they ended up calculating it as you're losing about 10 times the value to people being present but under engaged and under productive than you are to just letting them be off for a couple days to regenerate.
Wow. I mean, I'm not surprised, but that is that someone just said that's insanely powerful and took the words out of my mouth. I was about to say that is so powerful. I mean, it makes sense. Like I feel like a lot of us in HR see that and we know that too. Like
Yeah.
forcing someone to come in, we just know. Okay. We're getting a lot of questions and answers, and I think we're on our last. So we're gonna go over to live Q&A. Who is ready? If you're wondering how to do that, you just drop it in the Q&A box in the chat, and I'm gonna start. We have our first question. I'm gonna organize them by most upvotes for Kenneth. Kenneth, I used your full name. There is it said for Kenneth. How did you get interested in and then enter into organizational psychology as a profession? This has been so insightful. Thank you.
So it all takes a trip back to my college application. So my father is blind, and when I was young, I could see how much pain that caused him, and wanted to fix his eyes. By the time I was getting ready to go to college, I had to write like an essay. I can't remember the exact prompt, but it ended up being about realizing that he had a great life. He had a wonderful wife, two wonderful kids. He was able to provide for us, but he could never see the impressive man that I and those around him saw. And that led me to from I want to fix biology to I want you to see how great you are right now. And that led me to psychology. Um, I tried for clinical for a while and I discovered I don't recharge fast enough. And but I'm really good at helping people instead of going from hurt to okay, go from okay to really great.
Mm.
And that led me into HR and into organizational psychology, where I could spend my time and energy helping people be all that they can be and letting my colleagues who had the fortitude help people be at least the minimum that they needed to be.
Oh my God. First of all, I'm like tearing up. Like make me emotional. That was a really beautiful story. First of all, thank you for sharing that with us. And I thought that was just the self-awareness too of I'm good at getting people from like okay to great. I feel that all the time. Like I don't think I could ever go be a clinical psychologist either. And I that self-awareness is like really key. And that was such a beautiful story. And now all of us are about to fight each other for the president of your fan club. It's me. I'm the president. Everyone get in line. I I think that's just such a cool observation too. Like I love that that's how you got into it. And I also love that someone asked a personal question about you. We never get those in HR therapy. This is like the first. I feel like in 2.5 years, someone wanted to know about someone's journey. Okay, our next question, a little bit of a pivot. How do you get an exec to let you give them context when they say all I want is numbers?
So I think that's a long-term strategy. So you can present them with the numbers. I think that might be one of the places where you might want to present numbers that they don't necessarily know why you're presenting it to them. So the more you can get them to ask a question or be a little bit proactive and present some numbers about something you think they might want to know, so that they go like, why are you showing me this? Oh, well, because I would imagine that you would want to know blah 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 blah. And so I think a large chunk of it is also changing the focal point. So when they say to show me the numbers, they have already have a mental model of what is happening and what is not happening. And so what you want to find is a number that breaks those assumptions and go from there. Because let's be honest, if you have a leader who's like, if they're all miserable, but they're all producing and they're easy to replace, I'm okay, then you need to process that. And that
Right.
might be a moment to like say, like, okay, should I work for you or should I work for someplace else where this context matters? So I think it really is a matter of both identifying how you can create spark curiosity for them
Mm.
and whether or not there's any chance that they're going to be curious about what it is you think they should care about. Because if the answer is no, then maybe you're just in the wrong place.
Yeah, that's I have nothing to add. That was really great. We have another question. We're getting a lot of questions. I want to make sure we get to all these. Does the data tell the story, or do we use the data to tell the story we want to influence? When is it appropriate to lean on the latter?
So I've always told people credibility is your most important tool if you're going to play with data, because the second they're like, I don't trust you, it doesn't matter what you say. You can be right and they'll just ignore you. They'll listen to whatever random anecdote they want.
Mm.
So what I really like doing is pulling the data and doing the presentation with a clear narrative that says, I think this is the right decision for these reasons.
Mm.
Then taking a moment and going, are any of those reasons relevant to them? Because I think one of the themes I'm hearing a little bit is and the tension between I'm supposed to care of the people for the business and I'm supposed to take care of the people. And I think that is a tension that all of us who care about people are always going to feel in a business environment. I work my way through that by simply saying, if I only care about the people, I'll get stuff through during a growth phase. But the
Mm.
second things get hard, they're gonna whack it off and be like, I can't trust anything Ken says because Ken's all about the people. He's not about the business. And so always having those two things intertwined means that I can say, if you do this, it is going to blow up in your face and they will believe me.
Yeah.
And so there's a balancing act you have to do of how far can I get you along before they start saying you don't have my interests at heart, you just want to advance your strategy.
Yeah, your agenda. I think like look, leaders give us a lot of pain in life, it feels like sometimes. But the one thing we can't do is like they're smart enough to ask the questions as well. Most leaders you work with, like, will see through if you are using data to influence the exact thing you want. And like good leaders will ask follow-up questions. I'm never going to my CEO that and get it and assuming he will yes something on like my first time. I'm usually like most things he does yes, but like there are things that it takes 2 to 3 times of me showing the data, keep walking through the narrative before I get him on board to say yes. So I think like the line that you said, credibility is your most important tool, is is how you should approach leveraging the data to tell the narrative to gain the influence you ultimately need.
I think the other thing you should do is ask that when they don't say yes, ask them, what would I need to show you in order to get to a yes? Then you can go back and see if that's true. And I would stand by going back to them whether it's true or not and saying, you said you would need to know this. This is the state of affairs. I win, I lose. And that really builds the credibility because they will believe that you're focused on what is right and true over what is you want.
Yeah, the trust then gets built where potentially sometimes you're in the future, you might not even need the data. They trust that you are already considering all the things that they would consider, and you get your buy-in right away. Um, we have a really interesting question. I can't wait to see how you take on this one. One of our lowest metrics last year was that employees did not feel appreciated. We did the research, found a recognition platform, leadership bought in, and we were able to implement it. No one uses it but me and a few others. We're a 325 plus person company, and I preach it every chance I get. How do we get employees to buy in when this was the direct result of something we found in the data?
So this reminds me of a very different scenario that I'll tell about before I answer the question. So there was a bank I worked at where they looked at the data, saw that their absenteeism was tied to to daycare, and
Right.
said, "Okay, we're going to put in a daycare facility, and that will take care of the problem." Um, I run into some like shockingly generous leaders in the
Oh,
past.
God, yeah.
Nobody used it and they felt stupid and angry and were like, why did we listen to this? So someone went and asked a follow-up question, which was, why aren't you using it? And they're like, because what we need is emergency daycare. We all have existing ways to watch our kids on the day to day. It's when they're sick, it's when something breaks down, it's when the grandmother is not available. That's when we need it, and that's why we're absent. So they swapped it over into an emergency childcare facility, and they saw huge usage, and everybody was showing up for work. And so I think for a lot of the recognition issues, I'm not a fan in general of recognition platforms because it's again trying to take something that is a human dynamic of the relationship we have with one another and have the computer mediate it. When really what they want is to just have their boss say, "Hello, how are you?
Good job. Yeah.
Good job. I see that that thing you did was really hard." The recognition they want is not necessarily tell everybody the thing. It's just the person I work for who I did it for to be like, yeah, this is good. And so I think that's a good spot to go back and say, what does successful recognition look like for you? And then go to platform that supports that if a platform is even the thing. Maybe it's just a training for your managers. There's a one study and a supermarket chain that found like a huge impact on, I believe it was well-being as a result of training managers to just say, "Hello, how was your weekend?" Because they felt like humans and not parts of the scenery.
Yeah, it is. The other thing I think about when it comes to recognition too is like very rarely are we asked, how do you prefer to receive recognition? But I think if every manager went and asked that, you might find that most of your employees actually don't want anything public. They just want their manager to say, you're doing a
Yeah,
great job. Or you could
yeah,
work with me where I tell my manager every performance review I would like more recognition, and he says he'll try, and then he never does it. And that's a recurring bit for us. So, so happy I'm in that experience. But I think that's like
yeah,
such a good point. The daycare thing was fascinating because, like, you're right. I would instantly think, okay, let's get them daycare. Like, what a great benefit. And then they come back and say, no, I mean, I don't have kids, so I wouldn't know about the
yeah.
emergencies either. So I think like the power of the follow-up question is so important. And don't always rush. Like the data could tell you something, but I think don't always rush to try to solve it unless you ask enough of those questions too to make sure that the solve is actually going to solve the problem.
Yeah.
Love that. Okay. Another question. A senior leader of a skeptical team is looking at their engagement results and telling the manager to go fix this problem. The manager is saying skepticism isn't a problem, and now we're just going to be dishonest on the next surveys. How do we convince the senior leader that what they see as a problem is seemingly a big bias? I struggled with that one. I'll read it for you again. A senior leader of a skeptical team is looking at their engagement results and they're telling the manager, go fix this problem. The manager is responding and saying skepticism isn't actually a problem.
Okay.
And they're just going to, now the team's just going to be dishonest on the next surveys. How do we convince the senior leader that what they see as a problem is actually just their big bias?
So I think that begins by asking why they think it's a problem. So this is a great moment to sort of flip the tables a little bit and be like, by what metric are you determining that skepticism is a problem? How are you even measuring skepticism? Like, um, so is it like they doubt the effectiveness of the product they're producing? They doubt the company's success? Like, what is it that people are being skeptical about? Um, if you understand why they think it's a problem, sometimes it's just an ego thing. Sometimes it's an assumption of something else down the line that you could potentially measure and say, there's no problem here. And be able to go back to them with that feedback and be like, it's all good. We're doing what you want. There's no reason to fix this.
Yeah.
Um, I think that is probably the first and foremost thing. I worked with one person who's tried to advance a remote and flexible work scenario, and they, no matter what data they showed the leader, they couldn't get the leader to say yes. And he was like, what metric do I need to show him? I'm like, no metric. He probably has a moral or ethical objection to people working from home or having flexible hours. You need to engage with that assumption before any data is going to move him on anything. And so that's where I would really focus.
Yeah, I love that. I've nothing to add. I'm gonna try to sneak in one more question, I think, and then we can wrap. But this is a really great question. We talked at a high level about how to present data, but not how to collect the data or what specific metrics are most useful. Is there a best practice of what should be regularly presented for leadership to keep in mind?
So I think it varies depending on the type of company you're in. So if you're in a growth company, you probably want to show metrics that say how quickly we're increasing in size, how much that's changing costs, such as salaries, and where that is happening, so that they can have an eye on how am I growing my organization to address the business that's coming in. If you are in a shrinking organization, that's where you're going to find more focus on engagement issues, burnout, work being completed on time and well. And can you tie those things together to say, we're cutting back on our investment in the people to do things. These things are falling through the cracks. Do you care about them? If you want them to succeed, are we going to reallocate resource? I think that also allows you to have some conversations about upskilling or re-job homing someone rather than just doing a layoff.
I love that. Those are all really great points. And I think like the thinking about where your company is, like the answer I would give would be different for like the answer somebody else would give in HR because we all have different initiatives. And so I think you have to come back to that. What stage is your company at? What are the biggest, most pressing problems you're trying to solve? And collect your data from that part as well. As for writing questions, I feel like Ken, you probably have a bunch of resources on like how to build a really great survey. We'll have to find them and send them out after because I feel like survey writing is the never ending struggle, but you should work with a platform that can help you with custom surveys, essentially, would be my
Absolutely.
biggest recommendation. What's next on the note of surveys? I'll send out a survey after this to hear more from all of you about what you would like. I also have the next episode of HR Therapy is in July and it's on onboarding. So if you, oh, I see Ken has a resource. Do you have a book for us?
I do have a book for you, Survey Research Methods by Floyd Fowler. It's really great in helping you understand how to write good questions. And as you can see, it's small.
Love that. Actually, can you,
I'll write in the chat.
We're gonna also put that in the follow-up email because I'm gonna need to remember and also read it. But the next episode of HR Therapy will be at the end of July. It'll be about onboarding, the shit show that onboarding is. So please join me for that episode. Some quick final takeaways. One, I would not be able to do anything without my wonderful sponsors, but working with HiBob has always been a dream. It's how I got to meet Ken. It's how I learn all these cool things about data, and they do incredible research. They have an incredible platform, and I highly recommend you check them out. I think they can really unlock HR teams as you're growing and scaling, or even as you're still trying to figure out what is the best HRIS and more for me. So big thanks to HiBob and Ken. I'm so glad that I got to meet you. Otherwise, I feel like my life would be incomplete because now I have a million more questions to ask you. And one last thing about my Safe Space Summit, which is happening in October. I mentioned a live event. If you are interested in attending, we will also share information. It's a live event geared for VP and above to talk about the biggest and most pressing challenges HR is facing in 2025 and beyond. And that's in Chicago on October 23rd. So just a few plugs. Thank you everyone for being here. I think I said it already, but Ken, like getting to know you, learn from you, just like read the things you put out there. I feel incredibly lucky. And I feel like everyone in this chat is going to go find you on LinkedIn and try to befriend you because you shared so much good, helpful data. So thank you so much for being here and taking time out of your day to share with everyone.
Thank you so much. And if you want to find me, I'm Dr. Ken Machis on LinkedIn.
Oh, I forgot I can call you Dr. Ken now. Dr. Ken. You're getting
We're friends. We're friends. I'm Ken.
I can call you Ken.
Yeah.
You're getting so much love in the chat. People really enjoyed you, which means you have to come back again. Or we will make our dreams come true and finally do a podcast episode on all the ways I've misunderstood data. And then you can make me understand it better.
I would love that.
Everyone is saying thank you so much. Thank you, Ken. This was so great. Everyone have a great rest of your day. Stay cool, stay hydrated, and have a great summer.